Welcome,
Sure.
everybody, to the Unlocked Life podcast. I've got Dani Hamilton here. I'll call you a friend, Dani, before anything else. I met you in El Salvador. We were on that incredible retreat in November, and it was my first quantum health retreat, and it brought together so many gorgeous people like yourself. I met Dani on the beach. We were dancing. We had this free
I
movement activity, and yeah, I remember talking to you and Maria and loving your energy. I'm so happy you were game to join and do something a little bit different today.
I can't wait to chat with you. Seeing you reminds me of a sunset dance party on the beach. I feel like we have so many beautiful memories together, and that's the vibe I'm feeling. And I hope other people can envision that too.
Exactly. We were chatting about potentially having a reunion or seeing how many of the gang we can get together, which would be really fun. For anybody that has been in my space for a while, you'll know that light is a big thing and how we set up our days. We are going to talk really more on the human behind her business, which is huge and so successful. But the podcast is really about not so much the final product. It's like, how did she get from A to B? What is the human story behind this? The theme of the podcast is really unlocking ourselves. So many different stages of unlocking. But yeah, before we go into that, Dani, I was going to say you bring in a massive amount of light and circadian health. For me, whenever I came across your profile after meeting you, I was like, oh shit, this is the first person I have seen bring in all of the blood sugar and the nutrition so closely with circadian health. There's lots of circadian health out there, and there's lots of glucose goddess and blood sugar balance and things. But I just find it so cool how you deeply brought the two together. Before we go on to your story a little bit, for anybody that doesn't follow you, do you want to tell us a bit about what you do and your area of expertise?
It actually was a lot of work to sit and receive the messages of how to combine these two worlds. I was working as a blood sugar specialist. A lot of my clients were doing everything right, but they were struggling to get better. We were hitting plateaus and roadblocks. And I started learning about light and circadian rhythms from Sarah Kleiner and from Carrie Bennett. I was a little skeptical because I was like, surely food is so much more important than light. And I started experiencing it for myself and with my clients. And I was like, oh my goodness, everything I learned just made so much sense. Even though there's tons of really complicated science, when you learn this information, it's, yeah, that makes so much sense. That's what I hear people say constantly. So I feel like when something is a deep truth, it resonates so deeply within us. Yeah, I get that. I've had a hard time trying to weave these worlds together, but I feel pretty good about where I've landed. And I have some more things up my sleeve. I want to bring in more of the pieces of seasonality and this idea that we shouldn't only eat one way and work out one way for the entire year. We live on a planet with cycles and seasons. If you're a woman, you also have a monthly cycle. There's constant change and ebb and flow. When we look to nature, we see that all the time. We're not mirroring that back in our modern world. And we're trying to find the one diet that works and the one way of eating. And I myself fell into this. So I'm not saying this from a place of judgment. I'm saying it because I keep learning through what not to do by making these mistakes myself or just having these experiences and learning so much from them. They're my teachers. I was doing a ketogenic diet for a while. I thought that I should step out of this because I felt like I would do anything for a bite of a sweet potato or a berry. So I stepped out of ketosis and it was great. Then I was in this low carb space, in and out of ketosis, cycling. Recently, I realized I think I really need a big change. I am feeling stuck with my weight. My weight was an issue. I am not putting on as much muscle as I want. I tracked my macros one day and I saw that I was eating 97 grams of fat and 46 grams of carbs. And that was me trying to eat higher carb, lower fat. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not even close. And so I really started tracking and shifting things. And a lot of stuff came up for me. Carbs were once part of my problem. Carbs caused me issues. I was emotionally eating. They gave me acne and I developed PCOS and I had all these problems and I felt out of control with sugar. Cutting that out of my life helped me heal in a really big way. To lean back into something that once hurt you, there is a lowercase trauma there. This is something that hurt me. Should I go back to this? And There's an identity rooted in this. And that is blocking a lot of people from leaning into something that may help them because we're not meant to be in a state of perpetual winter our whole lives. I did this whole podcast and I had so many people reaching out to me like, oh my God, I was crying with you on the podcast and this is me. I was crying in the right aisle. I put back the oats 3 times. People are
Yeah.
traumatized from
Yeah.
carbohydrates. We just think that things are going to go horribly wrong. And we hear, oh my gosh, don't be in a state of glycolysis and it's not as efficient. But our ancestors lived in Miami, Florida, and it was mango season. They weren't like, no, too much glycolysis. We're meant to eat the foods that were seasonal. I want people to develop a healthy enough metabolism to tolerate all of these foods and maybe go into a state of ketosis or dabble with carnivore and intermittent fasting when food is scarce in the winter, although it's not really scarce in our modern environment. I feel like this is a really cool framework because we need the light and the light is changing. In the summer, we need to get that UVB dock up all year round. In the winter, lean into darkness and melatonin and that lower light, the season of that yin energy. And so I feel like the yin and yang and the light and the dark and the hot and the cold, the feasting and the fasting, it just makes so much sense when you hear it, right?
Yeah, completely. And when you're talking about the emotional component to all of this, it's like whenever I'm working with clients, so often we always talk about living in the gray. How can we get you living in the gray more and more? Because by the sounds of things, you were too. So many people come and they're like, I've done the black and I've done the white and I'm so exhausted. I can't keep swinging from side to side. And reprogramming and support and, in a way, effort to really allow yourself to be in that gray. And that's not just with food, it's how you allow yourself to nourish yourself, but then also to enjoy other things. And yes, it's going to be winter and we're going to eat this way most of the time, but maybe not all of the time. And then summer's going to come, especially for women, because we are such cyclical beings. We need to be in gray. It's not
Mhm.
good for our energy to be super X or super Y or super dark or black, white, whatever it might be. And I guess we're coming back to the whole title of this podcast, The Unlocked. It's like, how can we unlock ourselves from that cage of it has to be this way? If this is going to be the perfect way that I do my exercise and my food and my breakfast and my sunlight and my fasting and whatever, then it has to look like that all month long or all season long. I think we get so much power back whenever we're like, oh, maybe it's going to be different every day, or maybe it's going to be different every week or every season. We'll just kick off then moving toward your kind of unlocking journey. Can you tell us when you felt that you were the most locked in life? So whether that's emotionally, physically, I'm sure it's all going to be tied up together. But when did you
Yeah.
feel the most locked?
Oh my gosh. I feel like there's so many stages of finding myself in different boxes that I've broken out of and changed a lot during my life. So I guess the first one was in my childhood. I grew up in the 80s and 90s eating lots of refined and processed foods and lots of Special K. And I was always trying to be healthy. My mom was always into me being healthy. But the health advice at that time was eating ultra processed foods, low fat ultra processed foods, or whole wheat ultra processed foods. I found myself having tons of ear infections and strep throat and colds. And I got my tonsils out when I was 18, which was horrible. And I got allergies the next year and asthma. I was struggling with sinus infections and a lot of candida and recurrent gynecological issues. I had my gynecologist on speed dial. It was antifungals and antibiotics and antifungals and antihistamines, allergy shots and inhalers. I was at work one day. I was a speech pathologist and I heard this person talking about the paleo diet. And I was like, what is that? And they said, oh, it's eat like a caveman, how our ancestors used to eat. And there was something that intrigued me about that. So I found a book called The Paleo Diet Solution by Rob Wolf. And I read that book and it changed my life. I was like, we've been lied to. And I was like, we've been wronged. And all of this is wrong. And oh my God, don't eat that pizza. And it's gluten and seed oils and glyphosate and all these things. And so that was the first rabbit hole I really went down. That was the first box I came out of. This, I felt like the wool was over my eye. I felt like my whole life I had been trying to do things right. I was trying to eat healthy and lose weight, yet I was riddled with acne. I was always struggling with my weight. So many things weren't working. When I found real food, it felt like a miracle. I got the processed food out of my diet and I embraced healthy fats and salt and eating foods I had never really eaten because I was a processed food girl. And I started making my own food. I had to learn how to cook. Everything healed. I had no more
Oh,
gynecological infections or issues. I had no more tendonitis in my foot. I had no more allergies. I got to stop giving myself 5 allergies shots in the stomach every day. I got to throw out my 2 inhalers. I never had a sinus infection again. It was unreal what just eating real food did for me. So, having that story and having that transformation myself, I really clung to this idea that food is so important. And I still believe that to this day. I do not fall in the camp of you can eat shit on a shingle as long as your light is right. I don't believe that to be
long as
true.
you're
I don't see that to be true with my clients. So I think food is information and it is so important. It is so foundational, just like light is, but it is also really foundational. I was eating this healthy whole foods paleo diet in Miami, Florida. And then I followed an ex to New York City. I moved to New York City and I'm from New York. So I was like, oh, okay, I'll be in New York. The weather started getting colder. I had my first winter that I had in many years. And I was still eating paleo. And I started to gain a lot of weight. And then I started to break out. I used to break out around my cycles, like maybe my jawline or something. But now this acne was all over my cheeks, all over my forehead. It felt horrifying. I thought I was supposed to get better. My skin was supposed to get better as I'm not a teenager anymore. I'm in my mid 20s. What the heck is going on? I started to miss my period and then I didn't get a period for 6 whole months. And I was so exhausted. I was sleeping until 11 in the morning when normally I was up with the sun. Like my mom used to call me an early bird. I was an alarm clock when I was a kid. I would always wake up with the sun and woke up before everybody. So they had to give me some activities to do in the morning that were quiet. So they could give me these headphones and I'd play on a keyboard, piano, and just quietly to myself and not wake anyone up. I was always the first one up. For me to sleep till 11 in the morning and have my best sleep from 9 to 10:30 in the morning, this was very weird for me. I felt so tired, so foggy, so overweight, and I was eating the same diet that helped me heal. I was like, what is happening? Unfortunately, I didn't understand light at this time because
yeah.
there's a big light component here. But I found out that I had polycystic ovarian syndrome, PCOS. I was having, when I did get my period, I had horrible PMS and PMDD. I eventually broke up with that person and moved back to Miami, Florida. And so I was still struggling with my weight. And at that time, I also was wearing sunscreen,
Mhm.
unfortunately. Even though I was back in Florida, I wasn't really exposing myself as much to the sun. I thought it was dangerous. I actually had to get some pharmaceutical medications. So that felt like a failure. I felt defeated because I was in this holistic world healing myself with food and I couldn't get rid of my symptoms and I couldn't heal the root cause. I felt like I was eating the most objectively healthy diet in any room I walked into. I was exercising, doing tons of yoga and stress reduction, and nothing felt like it was helping. So I did take these pharmaceuticals and they did help my symptoms a little. I got off of them because I never wanted to just be on pharmaceuticals, but I still didn't understand what was driving this. Finally, one day I heard a podcast that said PCOS is the diabetes of the ovaries. I almost drove my car off the road. I was just in shock. And so I was like, oh my gosh, diabetes, doesn't that have to do with blood sugar? All of a sudden, another box I broke out of was this idea of not knowing about blood sugar. I used to say, I'm not diabetic. I don't have to worry about that. I don't have
Yeah.
anyone who's diabetic in my family. So again, I definitely don't have to worry about this. And meanwhile, it was really affecting me. And so I put on these blood sugar glasses and then I could see things through the lens of blood sugar. I could see that when I was a kid, my tendency to always want sugar, I would have processed breakfast food, yogurt with granola bars, fruit juice, and a fruit cup. It was just all sugar. And yeah, maybe I'd have a normal dinner, but then we'd have dessert, or I would beg for breakfast for dinner, and we'd
Mhm.
have pancakes for dinner. That was rare, but that was always my favorite. So it was like, oh, I was always looking for sugar. I used to describe myself as I don't have a sweet tooth. All my teeth are sweet. I used
Yeah.
to feel like I had a
I am that.
sugar dragon driving my decisions. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's blood sugar dysregulation. Carrying a granola bar in my purse all the time or carrying food with me wherever I went, eating before I left the house, no matter what, even if I was going out to eat, because I was
Mhm.
just so afraid of feeling hungry. But what hunger felt like in my body was actually a blood sugar crash. Yes, I'd feel hungry, but it was unhealthy hunger. I had these new blood sugar glasses on and I could see, oh my goodness, this is just something that was not on my radar. I started to design my plate of food to support better blood sugar balance, get into a state of nutritional ketosis, start burning fat for fuel. Like a miracle, everything got better. I effortlessly lost weight. I never broke out again. I had regular cycles, and it took 5 months for me to have all of my PCOS symptoms disappear. But after that 5 months, I've never had one symptom show up again. And so it felt amazing to really be able to heal myself and to have this knowledge. And then after that, I actually went to nutritional therapy school to learn how to work with other people. At the time, I mentioned earlier, I was a speech therapist, and this is something I don't normally share on podcasts. It was excruciating to have been learning about nutrition and health and holistic healing, and at the same time be working with both children or adults who were at the ends of the lifespan, who were struggling so desperately with neurological and communication issues. Because what I was learning was that there were so many things that we could do nutritionally to support the brain and to support the body's ability to communicate. Soluble vitamins are really important for children's language development and their ability to articulate sounds. And when kids would come into my office and they were diagnosed with autism and had some behavioral issues, there was often a McDonald's bag with them, and watching the dietary habits of these kids and then seeing the resulting behaviors I felt like
Yeah.
silenced. I
Yeah.
felt it was just a horrible feeling. And with many of the clients that I was close with, the parents, I would absolutely illegally talk about all these things about diet. And so
Yeah.
I was able to witness a kid who had non speaking autism, and he was about 2.5. This kid, so cute, came into my therapy room and ran back and forth. There were two light switches, one on either side. He would turn off the lights, on the lights, laughing hysterically the whole time, which is, by the way, a sign of yeast, because the kids who have this uncontrollable laughter, they're almost drunk on the byproducts of the yeast.
Wow.
Really interesting. And this kiddo, I was pulling out every toy, the bubbles, music, clapping, noise,
Bubbles.
trying to make them laugh. Bubbles are like a moth to a flame for kids. I was doing everything I could to get this child to know that I was in the room. He just didn't know that I was there. And so there was no eye contact, no joint attention, no bids for communication of any kind, no comprehension, no following directions, nothing. And so I asked the mom, hey, is there a food that he just couldn't live without, a food or drink he's so obsessed with? Because I learned that, and I took courses on nutrition for kids on the spectrum. And she's, oh, yes, his powdered milk bottle. It's like, okay. I was like, I wonder what would happen if the store ran out of the powdered milk. And
Mhm.
she's, so he comes in 1 week later, and I had no idea if she was going to listen to me because this wasn't what I did. Speech therapists don't talk about food like that. He came in 1 week later, sat down on the floor with me for 20 minutes, eye contact, laughing, joint attention, back and forth, turn taking. I have chills. That would have taken 3 or 4 years of speech therapy.
Like a
And
different
so
child.
I knew I was in the wrong profession and wanted to work with kids on the spectrum. I had worked with kids my whole life and I have such a soft spot for kids, families who are on the spectrum. I was going to work with them, but there's so much picky eating in the autism community. And I didn't do feeding therapy. That's one of the things you can do as a speech therapist, but I had no interest in that. The picky eating stuff, I felt like I know what to do. Can we just make this happen? I think I just need to work with adults. I also felt that I don't have kids. And if I was going to be saying something to parents, it's have your kids like this. I don't know how kids eat. I don't know about that as not being a parent to children myself. So I just felt like I was dealing with this world that I really wasn't able to bridge as well as I wanted to. And so I did let that go and focused on helping people who had a similar journey to my own. And so that was difficult. I've just seen so many people suffer so much because they don't know this information and don't have access to it. That was always on my heart. People don't know this. People are trying their best. And that's how I felt when I was struggling with all these health issues. I was trying to eat healthy. I was trying to lose weight. I wasn't going to drive-throughs. I wasn't eating garbage. And yet I still was struggling. I was at the CVS pharmacy getting a prescription constantly. I was constantly refilling prescriptions and I was in my mid 20s. I was like, there's something wrong with this. This isn't right. And so I feel like I connect so much to the pain and the confusion and my body's betraying me. And then I ask the doctors and they say, oh, I guess it's just bad luck. Oh, I guess it's just genetics. That is so disempowering. And so I just feel like people are so disempowered because they don't know. And so I decided to go to nutrition school and then make a business where I am teaching people what helped me and what has helped myself and my clients. I want people to know whether or not they want to take that advice. That's not on me, but it's just on my heart. I just have to get it out. It would go against every fiber of my being to keep this information to myself, not share it. It would feel, I don't know, I'd get cancer tomorrow or something like that if I didn't do it from that much repression. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yeah. And it really sounds, we're talking about being locked in. It sounds like, in a way, you are seeing the cages, like you are seeing the people that are caged in. And it's, I guess, what you feel is your role is not so much, it's giving them the key as opposed to
Hold
breaking
on,
them
I'm
out.
not hearing you for some reason.
Oh,
I think you're frozen
mm,
on the Zoom.
oh, yeah, you've gone frozen. Okay. You got me?
I gotcha.
Yeah, I was asking you about feeling locked in. It's so beautiful that really you feeling locked in was personal, but then it came to looking at everybody else in the cages. And I totally agree. It's heartbreaking when you know what you know and that information is ultimately being stopped for many different reasons.
Yeah.
When it's just for the person and for the child and their well being and not for monetary gain, it's so sad to see it. I was a primary school teacher in El Salvador, primary school teaching, and then now working with children that come in is just, yeah, what I saw that they were eating in schools, even. And I know it's a lot worse in other countries, but how we're setting up their palate and even parents not knowing what to send in with kids. It's massive just trying to get the information out to as many people as possible. I believe it is getting better. Thank God for social media because there's so much that you can share. At the same time, it opens the gates for different types of conflict and information and overwhelm for people.
For
And I
sure.
guess coming back to you then, a lot of the people that will be listening to this podcast or watching, majority, at least in my space, are going to be looking toward laying foundations for personal growth or for change and transition in life. And I would love for you to talk about something that I always bring people back to is this idea of the physical capacity to live a life that you want relies on us having the foundation in relation to your personal sense, growing your business, moving into this whole new life trajectory and flourishing in so many different ways. What are the practices, be it physical, nutritional, even spiritual, that you rely on and making sure that you have the capacity to hold such a big audience and such a big business and such responsibility for your clients too? Like on a personal level, what does Dani need to do for you to?
Okay, I love that question. I feel like I want to share another piece of my story that kind of relates to that, and then I'll get to that. Last year, at the beginning of the year, I got divorced. After the divorce, I was really struggling to even get to the place where I could admit to myself that I didn't want to be in that relationship anymore. It went on way longer than it should have. I knew it wasn't right, but I didn't get myself to be the one to bring it up and say it. And then after we got divorced, we actually were able to maintain a friendship. We talked about a lot of stuff and did a lot of healing, but we still work together. And to this day, we actually have a phenomenal relationship, much better than we had in our marriage. We realized we were really meant to be friends and it works out great in the friendship. We know each other super well. We can support each other and we want what's best for each other. And we know this is not supposed to be a romantic connection. And so that feels really beautiful. My relationship ended, my marriage ended. I was really confronted with all the stuff that I did in the relationship that contributed to its ending. It took me a while to realize that I had any part in that. And then I saw my part in that. There was a lot of denial, a lot of righteousness. This is a story I've never told publicly before, so it might not be as fluent as the last bit. But I started to realize this was more like 2 years ago, I started to relate to a lot of posts online that were talking about childhood trauma. And I was like, that's weird. Why do I relate to every single bullet point on this list of this childhood trauma stuff? And I actually, for a little while, thought that I might have been abused or molested or something. And I just didn't remember it or I repressed it because I'm like, I just don't understand how this is possible that, like, not just one thing, but these traits, this who I am, this like my whole personality, all my coping, like all these things, I felt so called out, but so seen and validated. But I'm like, what the F trauma did I experience as a kid? That was really weird for me to experience. And then I started to learn about these hidden types of things that are actually under the umbrella of trauma, which I never considered in my life. So when you are in a role where you are like a therapist for a parent, where you are emotionally, you take on this emotional responsibility to make sure your parents are happy in a home, emotional immaturity, where there's not space for holding emotions, for understanding how to navigate emotions, like pushing things down. And I just realized that I was treated so well. My mom made bows to match my outfits. I always had a roof over my head, and my parents were kind and generous. This is what so many people, I think, our generation are dealing with because of the traumas that their generation experienced. They did such a better job than their parents before them. And this is not to blame anyone, but I always saw those things and was like, my parents had these things much harder than me. And so I was always empathizing, but I realized that I never had a chance to look at objectively how certain things made me feel. And I realized that I developed this personality of people pleasing, shutting down my emotions, perfectionism, and being a high achiever, which is like every single one of my clients. I developed this personality based on these traumas that I experienced. I don't want to say apparently because I keep minimizing my own trauma because other people have had harder ones. So I want to redact that. It was surprising to learn, but now I understand that certain things fall under the category of emotional neglect or emotional abuse, even though that's unbeknownst to the person. I have not talked about this publicly and my parents are not listening. So yeah, I understood that, okay, in my relationship, I was not speaking up and I had a hard time asking for help and I just did things and became resentful. It was like, oh my goodness, I just became both of my parents. It really comes out of nowhere. We just keep repeating these things if we're not aware of them. I did a lot of introspection, and I am still on this journey. I did a lot of work because I am not going to do this again. I cannot continue
Mhm.
with these patterns because they are destructive. While my form of communication was not violent or aggressive, I think that it still could fall under that category because withholding, not saying your full truth, not saying the whole truth, that's a lie. And that is violent. It is violent and passive aggressive to not be authentic and to not have these hard conversations. And that is so much of my work. I'm also challenging myself to show up more authentically and imperfectly in my business online and with a decent sized Instagram following. When I started talking about the carb thing, this is new to me. I just put on a CGM to start looking at my carbs. And instead of waiting to have it all figured out and then tell people I'm bringing them in on the journey with me, and this is
Yeah.
so different than anything I've ever done before. This is such a different approach because I want people to feel the vulnerability with me and feel how this is hard and I don't have it
Yeah.
figured out yet, but here's what I know. Here's what I'm trying. And I feel like a lot of times I think I have to have it all figured out. People don't want polished little thing. They want to see all of the sides of this. They want to see the emotion and the rawness of someone's. I decided to way earlier and people are responding really well. And so I feel really excited about it. And yeah, so I did EMDR, which is like a trauma-based
Yeah.
modality, and that's apparently not super helpful for people with complex PTSD or trauma that is ongoing because these relationships are still present in my life. And so that modality served me for a couple of things, and then I feel like I got as much out of it as I could. I did some hypnosis. I did some plant medicine journeys. I did a ketamine journey with a therapist, which was really surprisingly helpful. I feel like it took off this layer of angst that I
Mhm.
had. One of the most powerful things that I recently discovered is this book by a woman named Nicole Sachs. It's called Mind Your Body. This book has been transforming my life and the life of all my clients. I want to put everyone onto it. This book is saying what a lot of people are saying, but in a beautifully packaged way with an actionable modality to help you that you can do yourself. Mind Your Body talks about how our nervous system is responding to this overflow of repressed emotions and
Mhm.
traumas and
Yeah.
stressors that we store in our body. So when we don't express them, they are coming out in different ways. We all know that if we have a stressful day, we could come home and have a headache, or we're nervous about something and we feel nauseous, anxious about a final exam in high school that I broke out in hives the next day. We all know that the mind can cause physical symptoms, but what Nicole says is that as soon as those symptoms become chronic, we stop thinking that it's related to the mind.
Yeah.
I see this with so many of my clients. So I'll share a personal story. So I am just starting to date again, and I've been on one date. Before this date, I couldn't even say the word date. It felt really uncomfortable for me, probably
Mhm.
a lot of shame and stuff. My friend was like, "Oh, tell us about your date you're going on." I'm like, "No, I'm not going on a date. I don't want to talk about it." About 15, 20 minutes later, I started feeling asthmatic. And I haven't felt that way since 2011. I'm like, this is so weird. I'm like, I definitely feel it. I'm like, no, it's in your head. You do not feel asthmatic. No way. So then I went home, I felt crummy, and I started to get a pain in my right foot on the bottom of my foot. I was like, it's like that plantar fasciitis flare up. I've had it before, but I'm like, oh, this is not good. This doesn't feel good. So I'm like, this is so weird. Why would I have asthma and foot pain? And then I realized I'm supposed to be going on a date where I'm going for a walk with someone in 2 days.
I can't
And I'm
breathe
like,
and I can't walk.
I can't breathe and I
So,
can't. If that
wow.
wasn't the most clear example of the
Yeah.
idea that my body is like, this is scary. This is not safe. And so it's trying to protect me. It was trying
Mhm.
to keep me in the house. To loop this back to what you said at the very beginning, so many of us have these perfectionistic tendencies
Yeah.
that we think that if I just can do the perfect diet and the perfect morning routine and the perfect workout for the perfect amount of time, I can heal. I can fix my blood sugar. I can balance my hormones. I can do this. And that is the exact opposite of what you get. The more stringent I find people are, the worse their outcomes are, the more stalled they are. And I truly believe this is because it puts so much pressure on the nervous
Mhm.
system to heal. If I say, Maria, you have to heal or I'll kill you, you're like, oh my God, you cannot heal in
Yeah.
that nervous system state. So if we're
Yeah.
putting pressure on our body to get better, it is doing the opposite. Nicole talks about the first step to all of this is radical acceptance. And I'm like, come on, can it be anything else? Can it be try harder? But
Yeah.
if
We can do that.
that this accept that my freaking foot still hurts, I don't want to accept
Mm.
that. Like, I don't want to accept it. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. It was the Instagram thing. So we're going to remove the limit. We're going to come back. Okay, here we are. So anyway, we have to get to this place of radical acceptance, and that's a
Yeah.
practice, right?
Yeah.
But she talks about this amazing modality called journal speak. And journal speak is not like regular journaling, which I have had a ton of resistance to my whole life. Journal speak is really this raw, unedited, unfiltered, getting it out type of a journal practice. And so she says to journal speak for 20 minutes and you follow it with a 10-minute meditation. It has been so transformative for me and for my clients. It is now a part of my daily practice to get rid of these, sort of just get them out of my body so they're not getting shoved down deeper. Being the face of a brand and having to come on, the more my audience grows, the more anxious I get, the more perfectionistic tendencies come out for me, the more afraid I feel to be authentic. But then it feels so good to be authentic. I'm so proud of what I do. And then I'm like, am I going to lose followers? This whole thing about having 100K. And it's, what if I go under 100K? These
Yeah.
fears come up. So I have to journal about them, just write that fear on paper and then rip it up.
How does that practically differ between journaling and
The practice is just called journal speak. You're
yeah?
journaling, writing it down, or I type on my laptop on a note and then you just delete it after. I find that my brain is going so fast that my fingers, when I type, can keep up. But when I write, I did the writing version last night because my computer died. And I was like, I want my computer back.
Literally just
You
just
yep,
all
vomit
of the words
everything on
out.
the page. Nicole talks about the first journal speak entry she ever did was, I hate my kids. And she doesn't hate her kids, but she just had to say it. She just
Yeah.
had to be frustrated and say it. And so I think that a lot of times, especially women, we're like, oh, I could never think this. I'd say, write the thoughts that you feel embarrassed to say, shameful to even have in your mind. You
Mhm.
feel like you would deny it if anybody ever told you. This is your space. And if we're not giving them airtime, if we're not looking at them, they're just getting stored and shoved into our tissues, creating disease. It's been really powerful. And also, I've done a lot of inner child work with Journal Speak as well. I just say, hey, little Dano. My whole family called me Dano when I was growing up, and they still do. So I'll just say, hey, little Dano, do you have anything you want to share? And I was like, what am I even going to say? And so the very first time I did Journal Speak with my inner child, my fingers started moving right away. And it was like, I
Mm.
never wanted to like Sylvester. I always wanted to like Tweety, but everyone else liked Tweety and I wanted to be different. And I didn't want to have a Sylvester
Wow.
birthday party. I wanted to have a Tweety party. That was the first thing that
Oh
came out
my
of my mouth.
gosh.
It was,
Yeah.
I was cracking up, but also, oh my gosh, poor 8-year-old Danny who was
Yeah.
holding in this lie of inauthenticity. It was just bursting to come out. And
Yeah.
so a lot of times it just wants to come out. And so what people see on this journey of journal speak is that their physical symptoms start to go away. Nicole came at this from a place of having chronic pain, and other people have healed their Lyme's disease, chronic migraines, chronic back pain, and hives, you name it. There's
Yeah.
probably someone who has healed themselves with journal speak. But of
Yeah.
course, you can't be like, oh, I'm going to do this so my body gets better. I can't wait. It has to be this, here I am. She calls it wearing it lightly. So being sure to not put pressure on our body to heal. I have to still love my plantar fasciitis and accept it and it's not gone yet. I don't feel like I've gotten to the emotional root of it yet, but
Yeah.
asthma went away 2 days after the date.
Is it? It's
Yeah,
amazing.
but the plantar fasciitis is here because this is my worries about dating and moving forward in life. I have this book called the Metaphysical Anatomy book. It's really cool and tells you these metaphysical reasons why someone might have a chronic issue. So I looked up plantar fasciitis and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so called out. Like it hits the nail on the head with the different sort of potential things that happened in your past and things to look
Yeah.
at, and they give you journaling prompts and everything. So you can,
Wow.
these are some of the things I've combined in my healing journey. One more thing, I've been a huge fan of the Enneagram. The Enneagram
Yeah.
has helped me so much. Do you know the Enneagram?
That was one of the first things that I did for, I guess, viewing myself
Yeah.
whenever I was in second year at university. So I was probably about 19, 20 years old. And I remember I went on Erasmus. I was in Belgium, and one of our classes, don't ask me what the topic of the class was, but it was all around self growth and personal development. And we had to do the Enneagram chart. And I just remember being obsessed. So all of my friends were like, oh, yeah, that was cute, whatever. I was like, Mom, Dad,
Listen.
I need you to do this. And I should have, looking back,
What's
I
your
love
Enneagram?
the need to be needed, whatever that one is. Honestly, Danny, it's been years. It's been like 12
Okay.
years since I've done that. But I do remember the need to be needed coming up. And that still shows up in my inner child work as well. What if I get left? What if nobody wants me or needs me? What about yours? What did yours come up as?
I had a real hard time accepting what my Enneagram was. My Enneagram is the one. And so we are the reformer, the perfectionist.
Mhm.
And with the Enneagram, if anyone's, oh, I'm a 572. No, you are only one Enneagram number your whole life. It doesn't change. You can just be better versions, a healthier version of the number that you are.
Would you say
The
that?
core type 1 Enneagram is the messaging that we got in childhood, you must always be better than you are. And I
Yeah.
say that and I can instantly start crying. So I'm
Yeah.
like, this is me. The Enneagram 1 is like black and white thinking.
Yeah.
We have an internal critic who is judging every single thing that we do. We have very high standards of excellence, but we think that things should be done a certain way. We judge ourselves and others. And I've judged myself for judging others. It's, oh, great. Let's judge with more judgment. But I've really made big strides on that. If I catch myself doing that, I've been able to catch myself and be like, that's not what you think. This is your programming. This is your wounding. And looking, I just remember recently, get emotional, looking around my Pilates studio and I just heard myself have a judgmental thought. I was like, but that's not what you think. And I'm like, look at this person. She's like trying so hard and she probably thinks her hair color is amazing and she feels so good in that. I saw her spirit. And then I had to forgive myself for having a thought. That's okay. This is what you've been told, what you've been shown your whole life, and that it's okay to have slip ups on your journey towards healing. And so trying to allow myself to be imperfect and to notice. And I also was dancing actually at a silent disco a couple months ago. When you're at a silent disco, it's just the headphones and the music and your inner dialogue. And I heard, oh, go over here so no one can see you. And oh, I hope they're not looking at us. And oh, don't move your hand like that. Oh, they're such better dancers than you. Oh, you did that stupid thing with your arm that looked stupid. Oh, you're so embarrassing. I was just like,
Mm,
oh my God, this is my inner
mhm.
dialogue. And then I was just holding that with compassion. And it was like, wow, you are really trying to keep me safe. She is trying so hard to make sure I don't feel shame, but she's
Exactly.
doing it in a way that is adding shame. So I was like, wow, thank you so much for trying to keep me safe. After I thanked her, I heard this voice. It was a very different tone of voice than I've ever heard in my entire life. It was like, look at you, you're having so much fun. And I was like,
Mhm.
who said that? It was like, you're doing a great job. And I was like, oh my God, I have
Wow.
an inner friend. I discovered that I have this inner friend And she was just being overpowered by my inner critic the whole time. So I tried to, when I see myself in the mirror, I try to be like, hey, friend, because that feels so much easier for me than being like, oh, I love everything about how you
Yeah.
look. That's like bypassing. It's not real. So I just tried to be like, who are the people who cheer you on? They support you and they pump you up and they're encouraging you. It's like your friends do that. It's, oh, girl,
Mhm.
you look amazing. Look at those
Mhm.
eyebrows. I was just looking
Mhm.
at your eyebrows. You have great eyebrows. But girl, it's just, wow, I want to talk to myself like an inner friend and maybe an inner parent at some
Yeah.
point. But that's where I'm starting from because it feels like I can be like, hey, girl, what's up, girl? I like that
It feels
outfit on
light
you.
enough. Yeah.
Yeah, it feels light. These have been all sorts of things on my healing journey. And I feel like the biggest box that I've come out of is just being unaware of all of these different things that have been driving me. And it's been stuff that we inherit and these defense mechanisms. And so that's been really
Yeah.
powerful for me. And it's like, that's what I'm coaching people on in blood sugar mastery all the
Yeah.
time. We're talking about journal speak. We're talking about perfectionism. We're talking about letting go, getting the lessons and not seeing things as failures. And
Yeah.
this is what people need now. We all need these messages.
Oh
And
my
I'm
God.
so thankful to all the creators who are putting these
Mhm.
things out, who are allowing us to see ourselves in this different way and learn these things about ourselves so we can then pass that on to others.
I can totally relate, Danny, to my work as well, our work shifting. It feels like with every 6 months, something big shifts. Oh, this is where I need to channel my energy now. This is how I need to help people. And I was primary school teaching and it was kinesiology and treatment after treatment. And then it really moved into a need to, every session turned into inner child healing. And yes, that is in part how we were trained, but
Yeah.
I just felt like I want to spend all of my time doing this.
Yeah.
And yes, how things have shifted again, whether it's in my program or one-to-one work, we're setting up the foundations with blood sugar, seasonal eating, flight. And it feels like once they have the foundation,
Mhm.
it's 90% of the time, it's what is the programming that's looping here? Because
Yeah.
that's how you view your life. That's your lens. And that's
Yeah.
how we're making decisions. So the trajectory of our life really depends on how aware, it's not even how healed we are. It's like,
Mhm.
how aware are we of the story that's just looping and looping and looping? And yeah, I felt some, I would say, guilt around moving so emotionally with this audience in my space and my clients because I was so into, as you say, it, the food and the light, because that had helped me so much. It's almost once I got there, I brought people along with me. That's what we were all doing together, and that's what my clients were doing. And I feel like that's exactly what you're saying as well. Once you hit that next level of your healing or journey, that's where you're going to take people. It's now we're going to this level and looking at growth, programming, how to reprogram inner child, inner parent, all of that. It's not for everybody, but it's accepting that whoever is in this space of mine, of yours, that's what they need. That's what you need. That's what I need. And hopefully that will serve whoever's meant to be helped by that. On Monday, we're actually running a free workshop. And the two sections, as you've just said, Annie, are like authentic essence, we're calling it. So, like that inner child in you, what does she seek in life? What is the flavor of the life she wants? And then the second half of that, we're going to be looking at limiting beliefs, blocks, and inner child stories. Very similar to what you were saying about the journal speak. What we'll be doing is more that meditative, deep meditative state and meeting her and talking and comforting and whatever it might
I
be.
love that.
I think that's where health is headed, like thick and fast. I don't see many practitioners in different fields who are not touching on that energetic piece of what's going on emotionally inside us.
I think so many people, myself included, have inadvertently made people so stressed about so many things. This feels a little hard to hold because I don't want to make people stressed about it. I want to help them know so they can make better choices. It wasn't my intention, but you don't know the type of personality of a person who's going to be seeing your posts. So much of what I teach in blood sugar mastery and what I talk about with my VIP coaching group, especially on the welcome call and every call it comes up, that I'm setting expectations that do not aim to give me A plus work.
Yeah.
Don't try to get everything perfectly right, because are 100% going to be stressing yourself out too much. There's no failures unless you literally quit and just stop. So if you had an experience where you went to a party and you weren't going to eat the thing and then you ate the thing, that's a really great learning lesson. Let's just ask why. "Oh, because this is what I want in social situations, or I wasn't prepared." There's just so many lessons we could see about ourselves. It's just, I need to prep, I need to batch cook more. That's it. Okay, cool. And how do I get that into my routine? So it's like we're sitting here beating ourselves up, when if we look at it and we zoom out, we could say, I just really wanted to connect and feel a part of something. There's depth in that. We can say, is there a way that we can connect and feel a part of something without sabotaging our progress? What feels like we could get to a happy medium that we can brainstorm? It just opens up so much space so we could get out of that cycle of ourselves up
Yeah.
and instead say, ooh, whoop, my blood sugar spiked a lot. Whoa, what happened? I tried to order the best thing on the menu. Sometimes they put freaking sugar in sauces and you tried to do your best. So who cares? Go for a walk. You're going to be fine. It's okay. Guess I can't eat that dish at this restaurant anymore if I don't want my blood sugar to spike. So
Information. That's what it is.
can we wear it lightly? Can we
Yeah.
be like the radical acceptance? Can we be like, this is okay, and my body is strong and resilient and I'm healing? I know not everybody's in the same boat to be able to say that. I do work with people who are quite sick and they're really struggling. I find that the sicker they are, the more dysregulation of the nervous system there is, and the more deep we need to go with some of this healing.
Dani, I want to finish up by asking you a few quick questions, just like little mini ones.
Okay.
This conversation took a turn that I did not anticipate, and I have loved it. Yeah, to
Okay,
be honest,
good.
I think I know what I'm going to talk about with Dani, but this was so much better than I anticipated. It was lovely to connect with exactly what I said, with the human, the you behind all of the work that you're doing, and also get an insight into the deeper levels of what you're doing with your clients as well. The
Okay.
first thing I want to ask you is, what is one fear that you have recently overcome?
Just today on my story, I had a lot of injuries from doing a lot of acro yoga. I was thrown in the air and had a lot of falls, and I got a lot of injuries, and then I started weightlifting and I got a lot of injuries, and I would take time off and get more injured, and then so I was just getting injured and then not being able to work out, and then it's so devastating because then you can't do what you love. Every time I got injured, it was just a bad cycle. And so I did some EMDR and it was medical traumas like LASIK, getting my tonsils out, and breast lump removal surgery, all sorts of things that I had to clear in order to not
Yeah.
have as much anxiety around my body getting hurt. But I still didn't feel comfortable enough to go into the gym. So I started doing reformer Pilates, and I have become so strong from that. Were you a dancer?
I think I would have liked to.
You're a better dancer than me. You're such a good dancer. I grew up dancing my whole life, jazz, hip hop, that kind of stuff. A lot of the Pilates is just like the acrobatics and the dance that I did. I feel so strong. My joints feel so strong. I feel like my body can handle weightlifting. I've done like 4 sessions of weightlifting and I feel great with it. I feel so proud of myself for overcoming that and being patient with the process. I did fall in love with Pilates in the interim. So,
That
yeah.
was the bridge class. Love that
Yeah.
one. One thing that you are no longer available for.
Guessing how people feel. There's actually a family member of mine who told me that they're feeling a little bit depressed and has left me on red on the last 3 text messages, brainstorming like, okay, I'm going to say something because it feels terrible to guess. Are they mad at me?
Yeah.
Are they just depressed? Do they need space? Did they just forget? I don't want to sit here and guess what is happening. That dysregulates me because I grew up around having to guess all the time. So that requires me to ask and to say, hey, you haven't responded to my message. Is there something you want to say? Can we talk about this? Whatever. So I have to have more hard conversations. So
Yeah.
no more guessing how people feel.
That's something that in our group program that we're working through is honest questioning and
Radically.
honest communication. It's so hard, but it's
Yeah.
life changing. Yeah, I really love that one. And the last question, Dani, what's one simple action or choice you would give to someone who's listening who is still feeling stuck in life?
Read Mind Your Body and start journal speak, because
Mm,
the answers are within you. Not to say that therapists do not have a place, they absolutely do. But when you go to therapy, you go once a week, once every other
mm,
week, or you do a couple of sessions. This is a practice that we need to do every day. It is our responsibility to feel our feelings. No one else can feel your feelings for you.
yeah.
And a year and a half ago, I didn't even know I had feelings. So this is coming from someone who's very locked up, very unaware of how I felt. So if you have no idea how you feel, you are not alone and you will be able to figure it out. You will be, but you have to start listening to your own voice. We have shut down that voice for so long. And so if you are feeling stuck, the only person who can figure out what it is that you want, what direction you want to go, the only person is you. You can't take anyone's advice on this because you have to figure out what is important to me. What do I need?
Yeah.
Just today, my friend messaged me and she goes, is it normal that at the beginning of the journey, you don't really know what you need or what your opinions are about stuff?
Mm,
And I was like, girl, I'm just a couple months ahead of you because yes, 100%. It's like we sometimes have no access to what our opinions are. I saw my best friend deal with this 6 months ago. For me, it was maybe 2 years ago. So many of us are waking up to the fact that, oh my God, I don't even know what I think. Like my decisions have been based around other people. And so reading Mind Your Body is just so validating. I love how she talks about it and teaches you how to do the journal speak. The book is really helpful. I believe it's about learning how to feel your feelings and sitting in the feelings. The things that I try to repress and not think about. I almost said for the first question you asked me, I almost said I can actually talk about hurricanes now. But I had so much fear of hurricanes and natural disasters. I lived in Florida for years and there's just so much fear there. And now I can have a regulated conversation about it, even though it's very hard and not fun to think about, but I'm not having panic
yeah,
feelings talk
I
about
get
them.
you.
And it's because I took that fear and I said, "Ooh, that's the last thing I want to think about." And I go, "It's the first thing I have to journal speak about." I always
Yeah.
take the thing at the back of the list, the thing that I do not want to even think about. That's going to be what I write about. And of course, if something is super traumatic and you need to work with a therapist on it, please do that. But so many times, a lot of this stuff that we just, what Nicole talks about is if we have a flashlight and we shine it on the monster that's in our closet, we realize, oh, just a pile of clothes. And so
Yeah.
that's the feeling that ends up happening. We disarm this monster, we take its control away because we just look at it and we're like, oh, okay, that's hard, but not that hard. This is really hard, but I can be with this. I can hold this.
I can hold myself through this feeling. Dani, that was amazing. Love that. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
Hopefully we'll see you very soon in person, perhaps. Enjoy your session with Rudy. He's coming
Oh,
over.
thank you. Yes.
And yeah, I'll get chatting to you really soon. Is that okay?
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks for
Thank you,
having me.
Dani. All right.
Bye.
See you later. Bye. Monday, the 26th of May, if you're listening before that, we are going to be running our free workshop called Fear to Freedom. And it's all around everything that Dani was talking about there, about that inner work, inner growth. And really, that is going to be the taster for the mastermind that will be running from June 2025 onward. It's a 6 month rolling program for anybody who really feels like they want to enter into this sort of world, but they want to have community around that. So maybe you're coming from a place where family don't get it, friends don't get it, nobody around you is really delving into these depths. And you're ready for that now. Check that out. I'm going to put the link in the notes. If you enjoyed this conversation with Dani, this is everything that we're going to be working through, personalized to you. That is the Unlocked Mastermind opening June 2025. Check out the link below to apply. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.